Welcome to the Phil and H Travel Podcast. Is it worth it?
We are super excited to get into this one today.
We really are. Today, we are doing a massive deep dive into Grand Cayman. We're going to cover everything from the hidden costs to the cruise ship traps and basically give you the ultimate reality check on this island.
Yeah, and we have a huge stack of travel economics data, cost of living reports, and, on-the-ground logistical audits from 2026 and 2027 to back it all up.
Exactly. And just a quick note before we jump in, if you're planning a trip and want the honest, is it worth it, verdict before you book, follow the show on Spotify or Apple.
Definitely do that, because we are going to figure out exactly who Grand Cayman is actually for and who should honestly just skip it entirely.
Right, because there's this really fascinating, almost contrarian claim we found in the sources right off the bat.
Oh, the luxury contradiction?
Yes, exactly. Imagine stepping off a plane, expecting this absolute pristine Caribbean luxury, but then you find out you're stuck in a cash-only taxi, paying these premium prices for a public beach that is literally swarming with like 5,000 cruise ship passengers.
It is a massive shock to the system for a lot of people.
It really is. Usually when you think of a luxury destination, you expect undeniable visual splendor, right?
Yeah.
Like an overwater bungalow in Bora Bora or, I don't know, a cliffside villa on the Amalfi Coast.
Yeah, you see the view, and the price tag just instantly makes sense.
Right. The landscape does the heavy lifting. But looking at the data for Grand Cayman, that whole equation just completely flips.
It totally does.
Yeah.
Because the sources point out that Grand Cayman isn't considered a luxury destination simply because it's spectacularly beautiful.
Right. Even though parts of it definitely are beautiful.
Sure they are. But it's considered luxury because it is incredibly, almost punishingly expensive.
And that is such a key distinction. Being expensive and being luxurious they are not necessarily the same thing at all.
Absolutely not. And, that distinction is the trap so many travelers fall right into. You end up paying Turks and Caicos money for an island that sometimes feels like a highly manicured, upscale American suburb.
A suburb that just happened to be dropped onto a Caribbean reef.
Exactly. And to put this into context, in early 2026, the Cayman Islands actually hit #2 on a global cost of living index.
Which is just wild to think about. #2 in the world.
Yeah. And it wasn't a fluke. It combined with this massive short-term rental boom that pushed prices to just dizzying heights.
The numbers in the audits are staggering.
They really are. We're talking about basic one-bedroom rentals on 7 Mile Beach hitting $1,700 to almost $2,680 for a single month.
Wow. And I imagine that baseline real estate cost just cascades down to literally everything a tourist touches.
Oh, it absolutely trickles down to every single cup of coffee and taxi ride.
So, if you are planning a trip right now, staring at a $900 a night hotel room online, and wondering if you should click book, well, this deep dive is your financial reality check.
Let's start right at the beginning of the journey, though, because we have to understand why people are so willing to pay these exorbitant prices in the first place.
Right, the arrival experience. This is where we talk about the actual price of easy.
Yeah, because arrival is undeniably one of Grand Cayman's absolute greatest strengths.
It's why nervous first-time Caribbean travelers or families with young kids just absolutely flock to this island.
Exactly. When you fly into Owen Roberts International Airport, airport code GCM, you land at this small, modern terminal that is intentionally designed to be entirely painless.
I was reading through the immigration audit in the sources, and the lack of bureaucracy is just striking. Like, if you are a citizen of the U.S., the U.K., Canada, or the EU, you don't even need a visa for tourism.
And you literally just walk up with a passport and an onward ticket.
And once you are through those doors, the whole environment is meticulously engineered to eliminate any kind of friction.
Right. English is the official language.
Right.
And the currency, the Cayman Islands dollar, is permanently pegged to the U.S. dollar.
Which means U.S. dollars are universally accepted at pretty much every business on the island, right?
Yep, universally.
Yeah.
You don't have to hunt for a currency exchange booth or struggle with a language barrier.
I mean, that is huge. You totally remove that awful moment of travel panic at the ATM where you're holding up a line of locals frantically trying to calculate exchange rates on your phone.
Exactly, like wondering if you just bought a $5 coffee or a $50 coffee.
Yeah. But I do have to push back here a little bit, because when I read about this, a totally seamless English-speaking U.S. dollar environment, it honestly doesn't sound like traveling to a foreign country.
It sounds a bit familiar.
It sounds like flying to Florida, but just with better sand. So is this lack of friction the actual luxury people are buying?
For a very specific demographic, the answer is a resounding yes.
Like families.
Think about a family traveling with toddlers, or someone whose absolute top priority is just safety, predictability, and control.
Okay, that makes sense.
For them, that lack of friction is worth its weight in gold. The drive from the airport to the main resort strip on 7 Mile Beach is only like 10 to 18 minutes.
Oh, wow, that is really close.
It is. It's a calm, orderly, well-paved drive. They are literally purchasing peace of mind. They want to guarantee that nothing unpredictable happens between baggage claim and the hotel pool.
Okay, but hold on, let me get this straight. Because according to the logistical audits, that perfectly frictionless bubble pops the absolute second you walk out of the terminal.
Oh, the transport reality, yes.
Right. The transport reality on this island sounds like a total nightmare for anyone who is used to modern convenience.
It is a massive logistical shock to the system. You walk outside and realize that ride-sharing apps like Uber and Lyft just do not exist there.
Wait, no Uber at all?
None. And there is no train infrastructure either. There is a public minibus system, but it really mostly exists to move local workers from Georgetown to the outer districts.
Right, and the sources say it's cheap, like a couple of US dollars, but it is absolutely not designed for tourists with rolling luggage.
Exactly. You are not going to take a minibus to your beach resort. So you are completely reliant on traditional taxis.
And the data shows these taxis are heavily regulated by the government, right? They operate on this fixed zone rate system instead of using meters.
Yeah, the government regulates the zones to protect the local taxi operators.
Yeah.
So to give you the hard numbers, you are looking at roughly 12 to 18 US dollars per vehicle just to get from the airport into Georgetown.
Which isn't very far.
No, it's not. And if you are heading to the south end of 7 Mile Beach, it's $18 to $25. If you are going to the luxury properties on the north end, you're paying $25 to $31.
And $31 for a 15-minute drive is definitely steep. But the data highlights all these hidden penalties that instantly turn a basic cab ride into, like, a financial hostage situation.
It really does. First of all, in 2026, these taxis are largely cash only.
How is that even possible? I mean, I can tap my phone to buy a bottle of water basically anywhere in the world, but I can't use a credit card for a $30 cab ride from an international airport.
It comes down to banking infrastructure and local protectionism. The drivers are independent operators, and they just choose not to absorb the credit card fees.
Because they know you have no other choice.
Exactly. It is a captured market,
Yeah.
and the penalties stack up so incredibly fast.
Yeah, like if you land late at night, which happens all the time with delayed flights, you get hit with a 25% surcharge between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m.
Right. And if you have more than 2 suitcases, they charge you an extra $2.50 US for every single additional bag.
That is just wild. Let's play out the psychology of that arrival. You chose Grand Cayman because it was supposed to be easy.
Right. You want the frictionless experience.
You've had a long day, your flight was delayed, you have your spouse, 3 kids, and 4 checked bags. You finally get to the taxi stand at 11:30 p.m., load the van, and suddenly realize your credit card is useless.
And that standard $25 run has quietly jumped past $35 with the night surcharge and bag fees.
And you are just frantically digging through your wallet, hoping you have enough physical American paper money to get your family to the hotel. That is the exact opposite of peace of mind.
It really is. And if you are a group relying on taxis to go to dinner or run errands all week, the audits show you can quietly bleed $300 to $500 US dollars just on basic transfers.
Just to get around. So what is the fix here? Because you can't just not leave your hotel. Well, I guess you could, but you probably want to see the island.
The mitigation strategy requires actual planning. You absolutely must carry US dollar cash for taxis. Or the better option, you can pre-book a private sedan transfer for about $25 to $55.
Oh, that makes sense. Or a minivan for a family for $45 to $75, which lets you pay by card in advance.
Yes, or you just rent a car. The sources note that renting a car runs about $45 to $90 US dollars a day.
Which actually brings up a huge warning from the data. If you want to take a day trip out to Rum Point or the quieter East End, do not even attempt to use a taxi.
Absolutely not. The distance is far enough that a single one-way taxi fare can easily top 120 US dollars.
Wow. So at that point, renting a car for the week pays for itself in a single day.
Easily. The broader takeaway here is that you just cannot rely on the default systems you use at home. You have to adapt to the island's economic infrastructure.
Okay, so that perfectly sets up the next massive variable in the Grand Cayman equation, which is the calendar.
The calendar gamble.
Right. Because if you are already paying a premium just to step foot on the sand, the exact month you choose to go dictates whether you get an idyllic escape or an overcrowded, overpriced headache.
There is a really brutal trade-off here between the weather and your wallet. It's the defining gamble of Caribbean travel, really.
So break down the seasons for us. What are the best months?
The absolute best months for weather on Grand Cayman are December through April. This is their dry season.
So less humidity, flat water.
Exactly. The days are warm, the seas are calm, and the diving visibility is at its absolute peak. It is picture perfect.
But the catch is that you are competing with literally every single person in North America who is trying to escape winter.
And because of that massive demand, the pricing hits its absolute peak. We're talking $400 to $900 a night for just standard rooms on 7 Mile Beach.
Which is astronomical. But contrast that with the data we are examining right now, which was actually compiled during the July shoulder season.
Right. This creates what we call the July anomaly. In the summer months, hotel rates drop noticeably. You frequently see 30 to 40% below those winter peaks.
So that $400 to $900 room suddenly becomes $250 to $500 a night.
Exactly. And saving hundreds of dollars a day sounds like an absolute no-brainer.
It does, but let's talk about what you are actually trading away to get that discount. Because a 40% discount doesn't just happen by accident.
No, it doesn't. You are directly trading financial certainty for weather risk. July in the Cayman Islands is intensely hot.
Like oppressive humidity.
Very heavy humidity. The ocean water temperature feels like a warm bath, and you are almost guaranteed to experience brief, intense afternoon rain showers.
But the real gamble, according to the sources, is that July sits inside the Atlantic hurricane season.
That's the major risk. Now, the peak risk for severe storms is usually later, like August, September, and October. But by going in July, you are definitely rolling the dice with the climate.
You're exchanging weather risk for a lower price tag and, I guess, a lot more space on the beach.
Which brings up the space issue. We need to dive into the cruise ship mechanics.
Yes, this absolutely blew my mind. I always assumed that if you paid luxury prices to fly to a Caribbean island, you were somehow insulated from the mass market cruise crowds.
It's a very common assumption, but the data on Georgetown explains why that is a complete illusion.
Tell me about this infrastructural quirk. Georgetown is a tender port. What does that actually mean?
Unlike many other major Caribbean destinations, Grand Cayman does not have a massive fixed concrete pier for cruise ships to tie up to.
Wait, really? Why wouldn't they just build a pier? If they get that much cruise traffic, wouldn't a pier make everything infinitely easier?
It would make passenger movement way easier, but it comes down to environmental protection.
Ah, the coral reef.
Exactly. The island's core asset is its marine environment. The coral reefs in Grand Cayman come right up close to the shore.
So dredging the ocean floor to pour massive concrete pilings would ruin the exact thing tourists are paying to see.
Exactly. It's been heavily debated on the island for years, but for now, they rely entirely on tendering.
So because there is no pier, these massive floating cities have to drop anchor out in the deeper ocean water.
Right. And then they use small ferry boats, which are called the tenders, to slowly shuttle thousands of day trippers back and forth to the port.
The mechanical reality of this is just staggering. The sources point out that on busy winter days, you can have multiple large cruise ships anchored offshore simultaneously.
Yes, and when those ships empty out, they are dumping several thousand people directly into the very small footprint of Georgetown.
And right onto the public access points of 7 Mile Beach.
And specifically, out onto the Stingray City sandbar.
Let's paint a picture of what that actually feels like. You might have carefully planned your trip, flown in, paid luxury hotel rates, and booked a $70 premium wildlife tour to see Stingray City.
Right.
Only to arrive and find yourself standing in what the audits describe as a crowded, floating parking lot.
That is exactly the risk. I mean, Stingray City is this iconic, shallow sandbar in the North Sound. You can stand in crystal clear, waist-deep water while wild southern stingrays glide all around you.
It sounds genuinely magical.
It is a world-class wildlife encounter. But on a heavy cruise ship day, that tiny sandbar can host dozens of excursion boats at the exact same time.
And the magic just evaporates.
Totally. It turns into a crowded, rushed, 30-minute chaotic scramble. You are elbow to elbow with hundreds of other people. A bad cruise day can entirely ruin the marquee experience you traveled there for.
So how does an independent traveler avoid this? Because I can't exactly call up Carnival or Royal Caribbean and ask them to kindly reschedule their fleet for the day.
No, you can't control the ships, but you can completely control your timing. The ultimate insider strategy here is entirely about research.
Okay, what do I need to look up?
Before you book a single excursion, you absolutely must look up the Georgetown port schedule online. It is public information.
So you can see exactly how many ships are scheduled.
Exactly. You can see how many ships and how many total passengers are scheduled to be in port on any given day. You specifically aim to book your major activities on low ship days.
And the sources actually have a very strict rule for this. If there are 3 or more ships in port, you completely skip midday Georgetown.
You avoid it entirely. You avoid the public beach access points near Governor's Beach or Cemetery Beach. You just do not go.
And for Stingray City specifically, the single best fix is to book an early departure charter.
You want a boat that leaves the dock early enough to hit the sandbar at 7:00 a.m.
7:80 a.m., that is early for a vacation.
It is, but if you're in the water at 7 in the morning, you get the pristine, peaceful experience right before the massive fleet of cruise ship tenders even begins bringing people ashore.
It is all about navigating the bottlenecks. And
Right.
speaking of bottlenecks, let's talk about timing your trip around the island's major events, because that apparently drives demand through the roof.
Yes, the events calendar is a massive factor.
The data mentions Botabana, which is the Cayman Carnival in early May. There is Pirates Week in November. And then there is the Cayman Cookout in January.
The Cayman Cookout is a huge variable, especially for the luxury tier. It's a premier international culinary event hosted at the Ritz-Carlton.
It draws celebrity chefs and a very affluent crowd, right?
Exactly. It effectively acts as a compression event for the entire island's high-end inventory. It pushes luxury room rate to their absolute annual ceiling.
The sources warn that if you are trying to book a December to April trip, particularly anywhere near the dates of the Cayman Cookout, you cannot just wait around.
You have to lock in your accommodations 6 to 9 months in advance. The Ritz-era luxury inventory and the prime 7-mile beach condos simply sell out.
Which brings us perfectly to the single most intimidating line item in any Grand Cayman traveler's budget.
Figuring out where to sleep.
Exactly. We've survived the airport, we've dodged the cruise ships, but the accommodation matrix on this island is where the financial reality really hits hard.
It does. And before we even break down the different types of hotels, we need to discuss a structural mechanism that really obscures how much you are actually spending.
This is critical for anyone trying to build an accurate budget. The baseline mathematical reality of Grand Cayman is the mandatory 13% tourist accommodation tax.
We have to explain how this works, because it functions like a trap for people who are just casually browsing travel sites.
Right. When you go online and see a hotel room listed for, say, $500 a night, that is not the real price.
Not at all. The government mandates a 13% tax on top of that base rate.
It's the equivalent of going to a car dealership, negotiating a price for a vehicle, and then being told you have to pay an extra 13% just to get the steering wheel and the tires.
That's a great analogy. And that 13% is often compounded by additional resort fees or mandatory service charges that the hotels layer on.
So let's do the math. If you are looking at a base rate of $500, you are immediately adding at least $65 a night just in government tax.
And over a standard 7-day vacation, that is an extra $455 that vanishes from your budget before you have even purchased a single meal or booked a single tour.
That fundamentally alters the math of comparison shopping. When you are comparing Grand Cayman to another island, you really have to do the mental gymnastics of adding that 13% to every single nightly rate you look at.
Exactly. And once you apply that true math, you start to see why the different tiers of accommodation function the way they do. The sources highlight the first tier specifically to expose what we should call the budget illusion.
I found this section of the audit fascinating because almost every travel destination in the world has a budget backdoor, right? A cheap hostel or a slightly dingy but charming guest house on the beach.
But the hard truth about Grand Cayman is that the budget backdoor simply does not exist. There is no true backpacker scene.
The infrastructure just isn't there. The sources say if you are looking for a cheap beachfront hostel where you can meet other backpackers, you have fundamentally chosen the wrong island.
You really have. The absolute cheapest realistic beds you can find are inland guest houses, small, older condos in the West Bay neighborhood, or maybe business-style properties on the Georgetown side.
And even those quote-unquote budget options run roughly $199 to $300 a night.
And that's before you even add the 13% tax.
But here is why it's an illusion.
Yeah.
Let's say you decide to save money and book one of those inland rooms in West Bay. What are you actually trading away to get that rate?
You're trading away the single biggest asset the island possesses. You are sacrificing the ability to wake up, open your door, and walk directly out onto the sand of 7 Mile Beach.
Because these budget properties are often across a busy road or tucked deep inland.
Right. And the second you do that, the island's infrastructure punishes you again. Because now you aren't on the beach, which means you have to travel to the beach every single day.
So suddenly you are completely dependent on renting a car. Or you are at the mercy of those expensive, cash-only, heavily regulated taxis we talked about earlier.
Whatever money you thought you saved by booking the cheaper inland room, you are instantly bleeding out in daily transportation costs just trying to get to the water.
It is a textbook false economy. You spend less on the room, but your total trip cost ends up being the same, and your experience is significantly more frustrating.
Okay, so if the budget tier is a trap, what happens when we move up to the mid-range?
We are talking about couples booking mid-tier resorts or standard hotel rooms, places like the Marriott Grand Cayman Resort or Comfort Suites, which is situated just off the main beach strip.
In the July shoulder season, these mid-range options run about $300 to $550 a night.
And in the peak winter season,
That jumps to $450 to $750. This tier really suits couples who are prioritizing location. You want to be on the sand, or at least a 2-minute walk from it, and you are willing to pay the premium for that access.
but the sources issue a massive warning about the hidden overrun for this specific group.
The food trap.
Yes. If you book a standard hotel room in this mid-range tier, meaning a room that just has a bed and a bathroom but no kitchen, you are walking into a massive financial ambush when it comes to food.
The audits are very clear on this.
Yeah.
The on-site food and beverage prices at these mid-range resorts are punishing.
If you do not have a kitchenette, you have zero leverage.
None at all. You are entirely a captive audience, locking yourself into paying resort-inflated restaurant pricing for every single meal, every cup of coffee, and every bottle of water for your entire trip.
Which is the perfect pivot to what the data calls the absolute smartest money move on the entire island.
The family strategy.
Exactly. It revolves around a very specific type of accommodation. For families of 4 to 6, or even groups of friends, the data overwhelmingly points to renting a 2-bedroom condo on or very near 7 Mile Beach.
The numbers on this are really interesting. A 2-bedroom condo runs roughly $400 to $800 a night, depending on the season and the exact location.
Now, $800 sounds like a lot. But when you split that between 2 couples, or use it to house a family of 5, the per-person math suddenly becomes the most efficient ratio on the island.
The trade-off is that because this is the smartest move, the booking pressure for these units is intense.
Oh, I'm sure.
The audits show that the best value condos, especially for the winter season or over spring break, routinely sell out more than 6 months in advance.
But let's explain the mechanism of why the condo is the ultimate defensive strategy. It's not just about having extra square footage, right?
No, it is entirely about the kitchen. Having a full kitchen is your only real shield against the island's brutal cost of living.
Being able to make your own breakfast and pack your own sandwiches for the beach fundamentally changes the math of the vacation.
We're going to dive deep into the food economics in a minute, but a kitchen is literally the defining line between surviving Grand Cayman and going bankrupt.
Finally, we have to look at the top of the pyramid, the luxury tier. This is the domain of properties like the Ritz-Carlton Grand Cayman, the Kimpton Seafire Resort, and the incredibly trendy Palm Heights.
And the pricing here is eye-watering. Rooms commonly run $700 to $1,500 a night in peak season.
And like we discussed with the Cayman Cookout, special events push that ceiling even higher.
The essential context required to understand this tier is comparative value. If you look at comparable full-service luxury resorts in, say, the Mexican Caribbean or the Dominican Republic, you will notice you are paying a significant premium just to be on Grand Cayman.
So why do people pay it? I mean, if the exact same quality of Egyptian cotton sheets and oceanfront infinity pools exist in Mexico for 20% less, what is the Grand Cayman luxury premium actually buying?
It buys you the environment we discussed at the very beginning. You are paying a premium for the absolute safety, the meticulous polish of the infrastructure, and the incredibly short, easy flight times from the U.S. East Coast.
So you're paying for predictability?
Exactly. You are paying to know that everything will work perfectly, that the tap water is safe, and that the environment outside the resort gates is just as controlled as the environment inside.
Okay, so you've navigated the airport, you've survived the 13% tax, and you've secured your room. Now, as a human being, you have to consume calories. You have to keep yourself fed.
And this is where Grand Cayman's global cost of living ranking truly bears its teeth.
The economics of eating on this island provide a profound reality check for most travelers. The sources lay out the real audited costs in US dollars, and the sticker shock is severe.
Let's read these numbers out so people understand what we're talking about.
Oh.
A basic, inexpensive restaurant meal, like a casual lunch, is around $30 per person.
And a mid-range dinner for two is sitting at about $116.
But here's the critical mechanism. That $116 is usually before the standard 15% service charge that many restaurants across the island automatically add to the bill.
Right. So that casual mid-range dinner for two easily hits $130, $140 before you even think about ordering an extra drink.
And speaking of drinks, a standard beer in a bar is $7 to $9. A basic bottle of water is $2 to $3. A simple, regular coffee is $4 to $6.
To understand the sticker shock, you really have to understand the macroeconomics of the island. It comes down to the import factor, right?
Let's break that down. Why is a gallon of milk or a head of lettuce so astronomically expensive here compared to almost anywhere else?
Because Grand Cayman has virtually no large-scale local agriculture or manufacturing.
Exactly. Almost every single physical item on the island has to be imported by sea or by air.
Think about the supply chain required to get a carton of eggs or fresh berries from a farm in the United States onto a refrigerated truck, onto a container ship across the ocean, unloaded at the port in Georgetown, and finally onto the shelf of a local supermarket.
That logistical chain is incredibly expensive to maintain.
And there is another massive economic layer here too, right? Because the Cayman Islands do not levy a direct income tax on their citizens, the government has to generate revenue somehow.
Exactly. The government funds its operations largely through import duties. They tax the goods coming into the country.
So when you buy that loaf of bread or that $30 hamburger, you're not just paying for the food and the shipping logistics.
Yes.
You are functionally paying a portion of the country's tax base. Every single imported item carries this massive premium.
Even gasoline, right. The sources say gasoline runs about $6 per imperial gallon, which really stings if you've rented a car to drive out to the East End.
It definitely does. So, knowing all that, how does a normal person mitigate this? If the baseline cost of a calorie is fundamentally higher, how do you eat without ruining your budget?
The data gives us a few specific mitigation strategies.
The first hack is seeking out local Caymanian spots, particularly in the West Bay area, away from the prime tourist strip.
Oh, like finding a local joint serving conch footers or jerk chicken. Exactly. You can get a genuinely great, authentic lunch for $12 to $18 at those places. It is significantly better value than the highly polished, imported concept restaurants you find along the waterfront at Camana Bay.
The second hack is what the audits call the grocery arbitrage. Because you're going to need groceries, especially if you followed the advice to rent a condo with a kitchen.
The island has a few major supermarket chains. You have Hurley's, you have Kirk Market in the Georgetown corridor, and you have Foster's.
The on-the-ground data indicates that locals generally view Foster's as being roughly 5 to 10% cheaper on a comparable basket of goods compared to the others.
And when you are buying a week's worth of highly taxed imported groceries for a family of 4, that 5 to 10% difference adds up incredibly fast.
Which brings us to the ultimate, unbreakable rule of Grand Cayman travel. We touched on it earlier, but the numbers here are so stark they demand repeating.
According to the audits, choosing to eat out at restaurants for a family of 4 will add an extra $120 to $200 a day to your budget compared to self-catering.
The math is just unforgiving. A week of eating 3 meals a day at restaurants can easily, quietly outrun the entire cost of your accommodation.
A completely casual family dinner out, like burgers, a couple of beers, soft drinks for the kids, easily lands near $150 to $200 once the mandatory service charge is applied.
So the fix here is non-negotiable for anyone who isn't operating with an unlimited budget. You must book a room with a kitchenette.
You must make a grocery run to Foster's on day 1.
And you have to fundamentally shift your mindset. Restaurant meals on Grand Cayman have to be treated as chosen, planned highlights of the trip, not just the default way you acquire calories because you're hungry.
The warning in the data is brutal, but entirely necessary. Do not book a room-only, kitchen-free hotel stay for anything longer than 3 nights unless your budget genuinely does not care about food costs.
Because if you do not have a kitchen, you are trapped in a cycle of paying premium, heavily taxed prices for every single thing you consume.
And a quick logistical note on how you actually pay for all this. We mentioned the currency is pegged, but how does it actually work in practice at a restaurant or a grocery store?
The Cayman Islands dollar has a fixed exchange rate, so a local snack might be listed on the menu at 20 Cayman dollars. Because of the peg, that translates to about 24 US dollars.
But the quirk is how you get your change, right?
Yes. You can hand over US dollars almost anywhere on the island, restaurants, supermarkets, taxis, but you will almost always receive your physical change back in Cayman dollars.
So you have to do a bit of mental math at the register to ensure the exchange rate was applied correctly to your change.
And a very important note on restaurant etiquette. Because that 15% service charge is frequently added automatically, you must always check your receipt.
Right. Do not accidentally tip an additional 20% on top of a bill that already includes a 15% service charge unless the service was absolutely extraordinary.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of ground. We've looked at the transport drops, the lodging taxes, the cruise ship crushes, and the brutal economics of imported food.
Let's take all of this data and consolidate it into hard numbers. Let's look at the daily burn rates.
Because the reality of this island is that you need to know exactly what kind of financial velocity you are dealing with.
Let's walk through the hypothetical daily US dollar budgets across different traveler profiles, assuming we are operating in that slightly more affordable July to November shoulder season pricing band.
Let's start with the backpacker or the ultra-budget traveler. According to the audits, the most realistic, bare-bones daily budget is roughly 180 to 260 US dollars a day.
And let's break down how agonizingly tight that budget actually is.
Right, how far does that money even go?
Well, that allows for $120 to $170 a night for a room in an inland guest house or a shared condo. It gives you $35 to $55 a day for food.
Which means aggressive self-catering from the grocery store, and maybe one very cheap local meal.
Exactly. You have $15 to $30 allocated for riding the local minibuses and maybe one short taxi ride. And finally, $10 to $20 for enjoying free public beaches, plus a tiny $10 emergency buffer.
The sources issue a massive glaring warning for this demographic. What actually causes the budget overruns here? It's the fact that there is zero margin for error.
A single basic group tour to Stingray City costs $50 to $70. Taking that one tour instantly blows a backpacker's entire daily budget out of the water.
The honest reality is that Grand Cayman's infrastructure is a very poor fit for anyone trying to survive on less than $200 a day. The ecosystem simply does not support it.
Moving up to the mid-range traveler, this is calculated per person. You're looking at a daily burn rate of roughly 250 to 350 US dollars a day per person.
Let's imagine a Tuesday for a mid-range couple. That budget breaks down to $130 to $200, covering your half of a mid-tier 7-mile beach condo.
You've got $50 to $80 allocated for a mix of eating a homemade breakfast and going out for dinner.
$25 to $45 covers a split rental car or a few taxi rides, and $30 to $50 averaged out over the week covers your attractions and tours, leaving a $15 to $25 buffer.
But the hidden mechanism that destroys the mid-range budget is alcohol.
Oh, the drink prices.
The audits specifically point this out. Drinks and casual on-resort food can effortlessly add $40 to $60 a day per person. You sit down, you order 2 poolside cocktails, and suddenly your carefully planned daily budget is completely blown.
Now let's look at the family of 4, because this is where the math scales up significantly. The daily budget for a family is roughly $700 to $1,000 US dollars a day.
Over a standard 7-day week, you are looking at $5,000 to $7,500 US dollars. And let's be very clear, that does not include the cost of your flights.
So what does that look like day to day?
The breakdown for that family week is $400 to $800 a night for the essential 2-bedroom condo with a kitchen. $120 to $200 a day for the grocery runs and the occasional casual dinner out.
$60 to $90 a day for a rental minivan and the $6 a gallon gas.
And $80 to $150 a day, averaged across the week, to cover one major family excursion plus a $50 daily buffer for incidentals.
And the absolute quickest way a family annihilates this budget, ignoring the kitchen.
Absolutely. If you decide you are too tired to cook and try to eat out every single night, or if you try to book separate, paid, guided excursions for every single day of the trip, you will blow past that $10,000 mark before the week is over.
The luxury tier, however, operates on a completely different mathematical scale. If you are targeting this demographic, you are budgeting $1,200 to $2,500 US dollars, and easily upwards from there every single day.
At this tier, you're dropping $700 to $1,500 a night just for the room at the Ritz-Carlton or the Kimpton.
You're allocating $200 to $400 a day for fine dining and premium drinks, another $200 to $400 for private tours or private dive charters, and $100 to $200 a day for a premium rental car or a private driver.
Interestingly, the sources specifically note what constitutes bad value, even at this luxury tier.
What could be bad value if you're spending that much?
The markups on in-resort spa treatments and on-site fine dining are considered astronomically inflated, even relative to the island's high baseline.
But what is considered good value when money is less of an object?
Privacy. Booking a private charter for Stingray City and snorkeling is highlighted as genuinely special.
So avoiding the crowds completely.
Exactly. If you have the budget, paying a premium to take a private boat out at 7 a.m., completely avoiding the cruise ship crowds, and having the marine life to yourself is exactly the kind of luxury experience the island delivers perfectly.
Finally, we have to talk about the digital nomad profile because this data point actually made me gasp.
The long-term stay numbers are wild.
If you are a remote worker looking to base yourself on Grand Cayman for a month, you need a budget of roughly $4,500 to $8,000 US dollars.
The baseline cost is punishing. Renting a basic one-bedroom apartment on or near 7 Mile Beach will cost you $1,700 to $2,680 for a single month.
Your monthly grocery bill will be $600 to $900. Getting around with a car is another $500 to $800.
Dining and trying to have a social life will cost $600 to $1,200. Utilities and the fast internet you need for work add $300 to $500.
And the data suggests keeping a $500 buffer just to absorb the general island premium on everyday items.
Over $2,500 just for the baseline rent on a one-bedroom apartment. That is intense. I mean, there is no cheap month to hack that system.
There isn't. Cayman is objectively one of the priciest places on Earth to base yourself as a remote worker. But the value proposition for a digital nomad is the infrastructural reliability.
Right. You are paying for fast, completely reliable internet, a stable U.S. dollar banking environment, an English-speaking business community, and rock-solid safety.
You are paying to guarantee that your remote work will not be interrupted by rolling blackouts or infrastructural failures.
Which leads us perfectly into the next major question. We know it's incredibly expensive. We have walked through the brutal daily math.
So, what actually justifies this massive premium? And conversely, what leaves travelers feeling completely ripped off?
Let's dig into the safety premium, because this seems to be the island's ultimate selling point.
The safety profile of Grand Cayman is exceptional. It is a major fundamental reason why people are willing to endure the sticker shock. When you look at the crime data, violent crime affecting tourists is incredibly rare. It is almost a non-issue.
So what are the actual practical risks if I go there?
The practical risks are largely limited to crimes of opportunity. Petty theft, like someone swiping a phone from an unlocked rental car or grabbing an unattended beach bag if you wander too far down the sand.
And on the roads, you might encounter the occasional aggressive local driver. Environmentally, the main risk is natural ocean conditions, particularly the stronger rip currents if you are swimming on the wilder, less protected east end of the island.
The audits highlight that Grand Cayman is exceptionally safe for solo female travelers, which is a huge metric for any destination.
It has a very low harassment culture. The tourist zones along West Bay Road are well lit and well patrolled, and the English-speaking environment makes navigation very straightforward.
Obviously, standard nighttime common sense applies, like you shouldn't go wandering alone down pitch-black stretches of beach at 2 a.m., but the baseline safety is impressively high.
It is also exceptionally comfortable for families. You have the incredibly calm, flat water of 7 Mile Beach, which is ideal for young swimmers.
You're usually adjacent to stretches of beach monitored by resort lifeguards, and the prevalence of scams is very low. The most common quote-unquote scam is just the risk of taxi overcharging if a driver quotes a fare outside the heavily regulated zones.
The simple fix is to always clearly confirm the price before you put your bags in the trunk.
And the medical care data is fascinating. Grand Cayman has top-tier medical facilities right on the island, including the well-regarded Health City Cayman Islands and the main Cayman Islands Hospital.
So if you have a medical emergency or a diving accident, serious modern care is available immediately. That is not something you can confidently say for many of the smaller, more remote Caribbean islands.
But there is a massive caveat attached to that world-class medical care. The treatment is as expensive as everything else on the island. The data is unequivocal. Comprehensive travel insurance with medical evacuation coverage is absolutely non-negotiable.
So the safety is real. The infrastructural comfort is real. The honest verdict from all these audits is that any discomfort you experience on Grand Cayman is entirely manageable and entirely financial, not physical.
The island is safe, it is clean, and it is easy. The only thing that truly hurts is your wallet. So knowing that, what are the legitimate splurges? If I have the money, what is actually worth spending it on?
We mentioned it earlier, but Stingray City in the North Sound truly is the real deal. The experience of standing on that shallow sandbar in the middle of the ocean while massive, wild southern stingrays glide around your legs is genuinely magical.
At 50 to 70 US dollars for a group tour, or significantly more for a private charter, it is the one splurge that almost every single demographic rates highly.
But the caveat remains. It is only worth that money if you execute the 7.0 a.m. strategy on a day with low cruise ship traffic.
The audits also highlight the diving as world-class, exploring the Kittiwake shipwreck or taking a trip over to the Bloody Bay Wall on Little Cayman.
2 tank dives run around 130 to 175 US dollars, and the underwater visibility is spectacular. And of course, 7 Mile Beach genuinely earns its global reputation.
The sand is pristine, the water is calm, and it is incredibly swimmable. Places like Rum Point and Starfish Point on the quieter north side are also fantastic, shallow, family-friendly alternatives if you want a change of scenery.
On the flip side of the ledger, we have to look at the disappointments. What is consistently overrated and overpriced? The primary offender is the Georgetown Cruise Day shopping strip.
The audits describe it as a duty-free jewelry and liquor gauntlet.
That is an accurate description. It is a highly engineered retail environment designed entirely to extract money from cruise ship passengers who only have 4 hours on land.
For independent travelers staying on the island, the advice is to completely skip it. There's absolutely no reason to spend your vacation time overpaying for duty-free luxury watches or liquor that you could likely buy cheaper at home or online.
And here is a disappointment that would drive me absolutely crazy. The data points out these premium beach clubs along 7 Mile Beach.
They charge premium luxury prices to rent a basic lounger and buy a cocktail right next to perfectly good, entirely free public beach access points.
You are literally paying massive sums of money to sit in a chair a few feet away from where you could lay down a towel on the exact same sand for free.
The sources also point out a broader conceptual disappointment, what the perfect postcard photos deliberately hide. Those stunning, empty drone shots of the Stingray City sandbar used in all the marketing materials.
Those are taken at dawn, right before dozens of boats arrive. The marketing hides the crowding. The reality is that almost everything water-based on this island is exponentially better and less crowded at dawn.
Okay, so let's say you've listened to all of this. You've absorbed the reality of the 13% taxes, the $150 family dinners, the cash-only taxi cartels, and the cruise ship swarms.
And you look at your budget and decide the math just fundamentally does not work for you. Where should you go instead?
The sources actually give us 2 very specific named alternatives, and they represent a fascinating decision fork depending on what kind of traveler you are.
Let's examine alternative 1, which is Cozumel, Mexico. Cozumel is highly comparable to Grand Cayman because it is a Caribbean island renowned for world-class diving, and it features very easy direct flights from the U.S.
It is aimed at a very similar snorkel and dive traveler demographic, but the cost difference is dramatic. The data shows Cozumel is routinely 40 to 60% cheaper across the board.
The value proposition is entirely different. In Cozumel, you are looking at solid, comfortable mid-range hotel stays for 120 to 250 US dollars a night, compared to the 300 to 550 you pay on Grand Cayman.
If you are a diver, 2 tank dives in Cozumel are around $90 to $120 instead of the $130 to $175 premium in Cayman.
So who should choose Cozumel instead? If you are a budget-conscious diver or a couple who desperately wants warm Caribbean water and great marine life, but simply cannot justify Grand Cayman's punishing price ceiling, Cozumel is your answer.
What Cozumel does significantly better is pure value. The food is vastly cheaper and arguably more varied. It has a much richer, deeper local culture, and you have access to incredible ancient Mayan ruins nearby on the mainland.
But there are cons to making that swap. The audits note that the main town in Cozumel feels much more commercial and aggressively touristy than the polished ease of Grand Cayman. The cruise ship crowds in Cozumel are also exceptionally heavy.
And most importantly for beach purists, the water clarity and the calmness of the beaches in Cozumel are just a notch less pristine than the absolute glass-like bays of Grand Cayman.
Now let's look at Alternative 2, which is pitched at a completely different, much wealthier traveler demographic. Providenciales and the Turks and Caicos. This is the direct, heavyweight, upscale beach rival to Grand Cayman.
Grace Bay in Providenciales is frequently rated as the single best beach in the entire Caribbean. It offers a traveler profile very similar to Cayman. It is incredibly safe, very easy to navigate, operates on the US dollar, and is English-speaking.
But here is the brutal catch with Providenciales. If you thought Grand Cayman was expensive, Providenciales is just as expensive, if not worse.
The sources indicate that comparable top-tier luxury rooms in Turks and Caicos are often $50 to $150 US dollars more a night than they are in Cayman.
So who makes the choice to go to Turks and Caicos instead? It is the pure luxury beach traveler. The person whose absolute top priority is having the single best, widest, most pristine stretch of white sand in the world, and they prioritize that over varied marine life or island excursions.
Providenciales arguably has the slightly better beach and a quieter, calmer, more exclusive luxury vibe. But what does it do worse? It has significantly less iconic, accessible wildlife than the Stingray City experience.
There are fewer robust dining options off the main resort properties, and crucially, there is absolutely no cheaper tier. While Cayman has a few inland guest houses, Providenciales operates almost exclusively at the luxury price point.
The takeaway comparison from the data is quite clear. Grand Cayman still wins if you want the specific combination of easy access, top-tier safety, reliable on-island medical care, and the highly unique Stingray City marine experience.
But if saving money is your absolute deciding factor, Cozumel wins easily. And if achieving absolute beach perfection is everything and your budget is completely unlimited, Providenciales edges it out.
Which brings us to the final matrix. Based on all the source data, the logistical audits, the grueling pricing breakdowns, is Grand Cayman actually worth it? Let's rapid fire the final scores based on the specific traveler types our sources analyzed.
Starting with the backpacker or ultra-budget traveler, the rating is a 3 out of 10. Grand Cayman is only worth it if you are passing through very briefly, if you are willing to aggressively self-cater every meal, and if you treat the trip as an expensive one-off anomaly rather than a base for exploration.
You should skip it entirely if your daily budget is under $180 US dollars. The better alternative for you is undeniably Cozumel.
For the digital nomad or the solo traveler looking for a base, the rating is a 5 out of 10. It is worth it if you absolutely require rock-solid physical safety, an English-speaking environment, seamless US dollar banking, and flawless internet to do your job.
And crucially, if your income can easily absorb the massive cost. But you should absolutely skip it if you are cost-sensitive because there is no cheap month to hide in, and paying $2,500 for a basic one-bedroom apartment is a tough pill to swallow. It offers great infrastructure, but a truly punishing baseline cost.
For the family, the rating bumps up to a 6 out of 10. It is worth it if physical safety, short and easy flights from the U.S., and calm, swimmable water for your kids outrank price concerns.
But that is only provided you rent a 2-bedroom condo to control your runaway food costs. You should skip it if spending over $6,000 US dollars for a week's vacation breaks your financial reality, or if your schedule only allows you to travel in the peak summer storm season and you refuse to buy travel insurance.
But for many families, the profound safety and logistical ease genuinely justify the financial premium. For the mid-range traveler or couple, it comes in at a 7 out of 10.
It is worth it only if you book a 7-mile condo with a kitchen, time your travel for the cheaper July to November shoulder season to get that 30% discount, and deliberately choose to spend your money on 2 or 3 specific high-value excursions rather than blowing it all at nightly resort restaurants.
You should skip it if you refuse to cook on vacation, because dining out 3 times a day will drive your costs past $600 a day incredibly fast. Finally, we arrive at the luxury traveler.
The rating here is an 8 out of 10. It is absolutely worth it if you want full-service, high-polish Caribbean luxury with a short flight, top-tier safety, and on-island medical care, and you fundamentally value pristine polish over rugged, unpredictable adventure.
This demographic is where the island's entire economic model makes the most sense. You should skip it only if you demand the absolute best beach in the world and care about nothing else, in which case you should look at Providenciales.
So what is the overarching lesson from this deep dive? Grand Cayman is a beautiful, highly engineered, remarkably polished machine designed almost entirely for comfort and ease.
But you have to step onto the island with your eyes wide open about the price tag of that engineering. It is a massive waiter skip for budget travelers and cost-sensitive digital nomads.
The single best, most effective decision you can make to flip this island from feeling overpriced to feeling genuinely worth it is booking accommodation with a kitchen, traveling in the shoulder season, and carrying good travel insurance.
And looking at the mechanics of this highly polished machine, it leaves us with a final philosophical question derived from the island's very nature. When a destination's entire economic model is built on meticulously removing all friction, all physical risk, and all cultural or language barriers for the traveler, at what point does that perfect convenience start to erase the feeling of actually being somewhere else?
That is such a fascinating point.
Right. When you visit a place like this, are you genuinely paying to travel and experience the world? Or are you just paying a massive premium to transport your own comfortable, predictable bubble to a warmer climate?
That is something to think about before you book. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
Always a pleasure.
If this gave you the honest verdict you needed, follow the show. New episodes drop every day.
That is the honest verdict from Phil and H.